Today, we'll be taking a look at Quantum Break on the Xbox One and the Potato Masher. If you don't know, the Potato Masher is a $375 PC custom built in 2014 and designed to compete with the PS4 for the rest of its life cycle, except when it competes against the Xbox. The goal is not to pick on consoles, but to show that PC gaming can be just as good or better for the same money. There are important links in the video description, so check them out. Let's get to it. Before we dive in, I need to provide some context for the resolutions I'll be referencing. While both the Xbox One and Masher output a 1080p final image, it's not the standard native resolution you'd expect, nor is it traditional resolution scaling like we've seen in games like Battlefield, Doom, or DayZ. According to the developer, Quantum Break's 1080p output is a temporal reconstruction from 4 previous 720p frames that each use 4x multi-sampled anti-aliasing. This means that when I say something is 1080p, it's this hybrid reconstruction and not native 1080p. The PC version added a toggle to disable this resolution scaling in a recent patch, but the Masher is not capable of playing the game at decent frame rates at native 1080p, and neither is the Xbox One. Also, I need to point out that I'm testing Quantum Break now because there's a little bit of a gap in the PS4's release schedule, so the timing was convenient. If I tested the game closer to release, there's a very good chance it wouldn't have run at acceptable frame rates at any resolution, as the PC version got a 27GB patch a couple months ago to fix many glaring issues. So, how'd they do? With upscaling, both platforms are capable of running the game at a stable 30 FPS. The Masher is using a blend of mostly medium settings, which you can find in the video description. The Xbox One looks like medium with a few lower settings that I'll get to in a minute. Remedy Games said they were going for a very artistic and cinematic quality to the game's visuals, and in some ways they succeeded. The art direction seems ahead of its time with many complex effects that are punishing to even high-end systems. If you step back from your screen, the game is very pretty, and I'd imagine a talented screenshot artist like Purdue could make some ridiculously good-looking stills from the game. Unfortunately, significant compromises are present, presumably to make the game function on its primary platform, the Xbox One. Besides a very soft image that in no way looks like native 1080p on either platform, there's a fuzzy halo effect around the player's head and body. Since it appears worse when you pan the camera back and forth, I first assumed it was due to the temporal frame reconstruction. It still does it on the PC with upscaling turned off, and I couldn't find any conclusive explanations online. Some people suggested turning off anti-aliasing, but that didn't do anything either. Rainbow Six Siege did a great job building a sharp image from a few lower resolution frames, but in my opinion, Quantum Break isn't anywhere close to that level of quality. The Masher has one other significant issue. Because Quantum Break is a DirectX 12 game, I can't use MSI Afterburner to keep an eye on the Masher's real-time system usage. I can't see how much VRAM is being used, but if the textures are set to anything other than the lowest settings, there is significant stuttering, leading me to think that the Masher's 2GB of VRAM is not enough for Quantum Break's higher texture settings. This is the first time I've had to run textures on anything close to the minimum settings, so my assumption is that there wasn't much optimization of the game's textures. Certainly, there are games with much less VRAM usage that look better. This means that the Masher has very blurry textures on many distant or even certain close objects, with better textures streaming in as you approach. It's very noticeable when you're standing still or looking around. It's less noticeable when there's frenetic action taking place, but it's a downside. That's a shame because in many other ways the Masher looks slightly better than the Xbox One. Ambient occlusion, shadow resolution and filtering, volumetric lighting, and some of the post-processing effects all look a bit better on the Masher. In some scenes, the additional visual fidelity makes up for the low-res textures, but in others, the blurry world sticks out as bad as the texture streaming issues found in Fallout 4. If graphics cards with 4GB of VRAM were more affordable back in 2014 when the Masher was built, it would probably have the edge here. As it is, the Xbox One is a little less pretty, but more consistent and refined visually. If the Masher can't run Quantum Break at a native 1080p, is there any point to testing it at 1440p? Well, a 1440p temporal reconstruction does look a little better than a 1080p reconstruction, so it's at least worth taking a quick look. At very low settings, the Masher was fairly stable again at 30 FPS. The game honestly doesn't look bad at these settings, which makes me wish that lower visual options were available to allow gamers to play using a wider range of hardware. As usual, 4K is not a realistic option. To run the game at 60 FPS, I have to lower the final in-game resolution to 720p and use low settings. This means that the image is being reconstructed from several sub-HD frames, and it shows. While 60 FPS always looks nice, the extremely soft, shimmering image that I'm stuck with is absolutely not worth it in my opinion. If it wasn't for the newer visual effects in use, Quantum Break looks like a PS2 game in overall image clarity at these settings. Quantum Break aspires to be a tech showcase and an interesting take on narrative storytelling in video games. However, significant visual compromises on both platforms sour the experience. I can't recommend paying $60 for the PC version of this game unless you have high-end hardware or are just dying to play it. If you have both platforms, pick up a cheaper physical copy on the Xbox One. If you're curious how I'm going to call this one, this is officially the first time where a game has looked worse on the Potato Masher when it wasn't a broken port or an otherwise mishandled release. True, better texture optimization would probably give the Masher the overall edge, but since the rest of the game appears to have been fixed, this is what we have to work with. For all I know, there could be other reasons higher quality texture settings cause stuttering in this particular case, but there's nothing obvious that I've found. The Potato Masher just lost a comparison, fair and square. If you enjoyed this video, check out the original build video or any of the other Potato Masher videos linked on screen. This project was started by the Casual Shenanigans Gaming Podcast, so click the link to check us out. You can support this channel and the Potato Masher project by tossing me a few bucks on Patreon. It helps me test new games quicker and better, and it helps support future projects like possibly building a PS4 Neo competitor. So, thank you all for your support, thanks for watching. Consider giving this video a like if you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time.